After a few attempts, I'm starting this video again, and I've made a few notes this time. Anyway, the title of the video is Evolution was manipulated to control you. That's what I'm going to go with, I think. Dan, what are you talking about? So I usually start my videos. What are you talking about, Dan? You're crazy. Well, we're going to get to that. It's going to take me a few minutes. But what we need to do is start with what you think evolution is, or what we've been taught, or what the narrative is. Because, I mean, if you haven't read the book, most people probably haven't. Most people get the school national curriculum version of what evolution is. Okay, I got problems with it because it's misleading. Okay, there's no other way of saying it other than it's misleading. The phrases that are what do I want to say are used a lot. You know, the sort of catchphrases of evolution. A lot of them can be misconstrued, and a lot of them are sort of a little ambiguous. You know, they lead you to make false assumptions. Okay. Anyway, without further ado, I mean, a quick disclaimer: I haven't read Origin of Species. I probably will never read it, to tell you the truth. Going into that sort of thing about Darwin and everything, you know, I hate to break it to people, and the scientists especially, I don't think Darwin's come up with anything new here. If you look at certain cultures and religions, they've known about this for thousands upon thousands of years. If you look at some very easy things to observe within our own cultures, we can observe how species can be changed through selection. Okay, it really doesn't take a rocket scientist to work this stuff out. Sorry, it's late again. I'm doing this video and the words aren't coming out clear. But it don't take a rocket scientist to work this stuff out. I mean, I'm going to take the example here before we even get into what I was taught at school about what evolution is and what's wrong with it. Let's just pick up on what Darwin was saying. Okay, basically he started off preaching, I believe, just the select. Oh God, Dan. Okay, he started off preaching natural selection. Okay, which is great. You know, I don't know how he came to his conclusions on this. Like I said, I haven't read the book. But if we look in our own societies around the world, okay, our own cultures, let's take an example, the one that everybody will probably be very familiar with, and that is dogs. Okay, dogs have been selectively bred by mankind for thousands of years. This is Googleable. You can go and look this stuff up. I mean, we're talking, you know, several thousand years on some of these dog breeds. Okay, so it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that a species can be changed by simply selecting what you want. Okay, and it doesn't then take a great giant leap to realize that nature selects what it wants. It throws an issue up, it throws up a situation, and then the species adapts to the situation. Great, that was it. We didn't need to know anything more than this. Okay, but for some reason Darwin wanted to prove his theory. That's not really his theory, is it? Because it was already well known, and anybody with two eyes and half a brain could probably figure it out back then anyway. Anyway, so I guess he wanted to try and observe it in nature. That's what I'm guessing. But Um, Here's a little tidbit of funniness, and what you would call irony, I guess. And I've just used the example of dogs, right? And selective breeding by man. That's your experiment right there to prove natural selection. Okay. He goes away on a ship. Okay, for I don't know how many years he was off gallivant into the Galapagos Islands to try and figure all this stuff out. What's the ship called? HMS Beagle. Now, put two and two together, and you start realizing that reality likes to throw these little. It's kind of a joking kind of thing, I think. But anyway, I said that to my wife, and she said, "Whoa, you're reaching there." Reaching down. I said, it's just stuff that you see, when you start looking at this stuff, odd stuff just starts popping out at you. Anyway, so with that being said, okay, I basically explained there really what evolution is, and it's just natural selection, okay? Species adapt to conditions given to them, different situations, different scenarios, okay? And that's determined by nature, whatever nature throws at them. That's evolution in a nutshell right there. In order for an animal to evolve, okay, you have to have a genetic code that is able to change and adapt. Okay, it's just common sense. So somewhere in the genetics, we must be having a change occur that allows different characteristics to be displayed by the individuals of the species that can then be selected by nature. So if you have something that's changing, which is nature, in order to keep up with nature, you also have to be able to change. This is not rocket science. This is all stuff that can be inferred and is matter of fact, okay? You can see it, okay? Now, the things that they don't really know is the actual processes by which these changes occur. So we get lumped with what I was taught at school, which is genetic mutations, random at best genetic mutations. This is what I was taught at school, led to survival of the fittest. Well, I've got problems with both those two statements there. Random mutations. Now, two things about that. Random makes it sound like a chance thing, okay, like it wasn't planned at all, okay, which it may be that, I'm open to any ideas, I don't believe either way, right? Because you just don't know. So how can you have that belief system? And but it's always a possibility. So all you can really be in life is stuck somewhere in the middle, looking at both sides of the story and balancing it out in your head. That's it. Anyway, I have a problem with random because it makes it sound like it's not planned, and it's deliberate. There's a reason for this. We'll get into this in a minute. And mutation, again, mutation. When mutation springs to mind, it sounds like something unnatural, something that's not meant to be. Okay, it's not. It's outside of the process, if you like. It's definitely a mutation. You would think when you think of mutant, you think of something that's not right. Shouldn't have happened. It wasn't an intentional thing. Well, this is the point of this is to bring us away from the idea of being created. Both of those things. Okay, both of those ideas there. That it's just a random thing, and that it was not meant to happen, if you like, but it just did. Both of those things bring us away from that idea of something being intentional. I would probably argue the other way on it. The idea that a species needs to change there needs to be mechanisms in place for that genetic code to change. You know, why wouldn't several different mechanisms be put in place in order for those things to happen? Okay, so far from it being chance, I think it's deliberate. It has to be deliberate, otherwise the system wouldn't work. Okay, and that's where I stand on it at the minute. Okay, so let's tackle the next little thing: survival of the fittest. Let's take a step back a minute and let's start thinking again about this random change that happens. Okay, so you have these random changes that they're saying you have. Random mutations. I've changed it to changes because that sounds a little bit better. But you have these changes that happen. They might be on a set, actually happens on a set period. It's not just a random thing that just happened. It might be set in there that it happens on a certain number of splits or whatever. It might look random, but obviously it probably isn't. So what we have is we have this problem with survival of the fittest. I don't like that term at all, because it implies that regardless of the way the fittest gets there, it's their entitlement to survive. Okay, it leads us into social Darwinism. Okay, before we get into that, I want to explain why that's wrong in terms of actual evolution. Okay, because what the problem is we have a species as a whole. Okay, there's no denying that. It isn't just one man going about his business, dividing asexually, and a bunch of clones coming off of him. We have a species as a whole. Okay, so if we are a collective as a whole, you have to treat everybody equally. Okay, this is what brings me back into the natural law, and this is the problem that I have with evolution changing the viewpoint of natural law. Okay, so we have survival of the fittest. We have that as a wrong term in my book, because we have to have a collective species, and from that collective species, nature decides, not another man. Nature decides, because nature's the ultimate. There isn't a man above nature. You can't say, oh well, this man's above other men. Yeah, but he's not above nature, and that's who ultimately decides. If an asteroid hits the Earth tomorrow, we're all screwed. There ain't no man, stopping that asteroid like Superman flying up, pushing it off out into space. What we've got is we've got a collective species, okay? And in that collective species, we have individuals. And all individuals are equal enough to breed with each other, but we have slight little variances, okay? Slight genetic variances, okay? And what this allows us to do via natural selection is it picks out those little differences that it wants to use so that the species can survive. Nature throws something at the species then puts forward those individuals that have the required genetics, and so the species moves forward, okay, or what we think is forward, because we don't really know if that's another problem with, and we'll get into the social Darwinism and about progression in a minute. But that's the issue, that's how it works. I'm flat out telling you now, that's how it works. All you mad scientists out there, that's how it works. And you see, what we have right now is we have a completely polarized argument on this thing. We've got creationists on one side and evolutionists on the other side. Guess what? It's probably a bit of both. I need to get in front of the camera. It's probably a bit of both. There needs to be balance, okay? Often, you see, the reason why evolution is such a popular thing and creation is such a popular thing, because probably there's truth in both of them, okay? What you need to do is you need to find those truths, throw aside the mumbo jumbo, and there's some truths in there, and somewhere in the middle, guess what? You're going to have a little bit of this one and a little bit of that one, and you're going to have, ultimate truth, whatever that is. Anyway, getting off topic. So that actually would probably be a good place to get into social Darwinism now. There is no, before we get into social Darwinism, there is no survival of the fittest. If it was survival of the fittest, every other species you would see out there, I mean, you'd have lions going around killing all the rest of the lions. It's not how it works. It's not how it works. Oh, damn, but we see them fighting all. When it comes to breeding time, yeah, okay. And when it comes to a bit of territory, yeah, there might be some fighting over it. But very rarely do you see one lion kill another one. They usually have a bit of a punch up, and then the slightly weaker one moves on. Okay. Now, that could be your argument for survival of the fittest. But when we're looking at natural law, what we're really talking about is the species as a whole. Okay, we're not talking about, two lions, on one side of the bloody game reserve, and then, fight duking it out over who's going to get to breed them females. You know what I mean? It's, missing the point. Okay. And if we get into natural law, you can start seeing why you're missing the point. You need to, if you've missed that point, go and study natural law or something. Go and watch some of my other videos about natural law. If you've got your mind open enough, okay, you can go and look at these things, and you can start piecing stuff together. I mean, I'm not trying to change anybody's beliefs, but beliefs can be a dangerous thing. Believe you me, they can be dangerous, especially if you get enough people together with the same belief. And I do break it down. The only thing you can really gather from the world in terms of a belief system is what the actual world puts at you, right? And the main thing I see is two sides, two opposing forces, which really aren't there, but they're not really opposing. They're part of a cycle, okay, and they just appear that way. There is no opposites. There's just a perspective and a balancing point in between that, And so what I see in nature is what I take away from the world. That is, there's two opposites and there's a balance point in between, okay? And the balance point is where you want to be. The balance point is God. The balance point is the path that you should be walking, okay? Now, I know that in order to have this reality, we've got to have two polar opposites to begin with, okay? But they're not really polar opposites. They're just different points on a continuous line, okay? And the continuous line is balanced by the circle, okay? I really need to move my hands so that you can actually see what I'm gesturing here. Anyway, let's get into social Darwinism now, because I've lost track of where I even got to in the whole thing. Now, this social Darwinism, the survival of the fittest, that's part of it. That was something that wasn't in the original Origin of Species, I don't think. They chucked that in there later. Whether or not that was certain powers in the world that influenced that going into the book, I mean, if they see something that's popular and they can use that to their advantage, capitalism, that kind of thing, that's a good reason for putting these kind of ideas into something. There's a reason why certain things are shown to you in the world, okay? And there's usually some kind of agenda behind it. Without getting too conspiratorial, we're just going to continue on with this social Darwinism, okay? So we've got the survival of the fittest thing, which implies that there's somebody fitter than you that should be ruling you. Okay, that's what that does. It takes away natural selection out of the picture, and it gets rid of the idea of nature having anything to do with anything, and it's now just survival of the fittest. Okay, that also implies that you can increase your odds of survival by being fitter. Okay, now the capitalists like to clamber on this. The idea of having a higher social standing, or having physically having more stuff than somebody else, that idea leads to people spending some more money. What was my thing? Spending more money in the system, and it's a win-win for capitalism. That idea that I need more stuff in order to survive, or I need more stuff so that I can establish my status in the world as being superior to somebody else's. Okay, and when we're superior, that's survival of the fittest again. You're saying I'm fitter than you. So moving on yet still further, of course, we've gone into the random thing. I've already spoken about that. The idea of random anything, it takes away that something is purposeful, like nature. Nature has rules. Okay, this is not just, it's a bit odd to say things just happen by chance, yet the universe has quite a lot of rules, doesn't it? But everything happens by chance. Really, just think about that for a minute. So you got to get your own conclusions from that. I know where I'm at on it, and I know where a lot of people are at on it, and I know where a lot of what I call normal people are at on that. A lot of scientists. Anyway, and then let's jump to the mutation thing again. That says something unnatural happened there, something not natural. The idea that something wasn't purposeful again. I'm going to pick up on another little point while we're in here, okay? Because you see evolution being echoed in ideas in other things. And the big place it's echoed right now with this mutation thing, and this is why it's all brought up, is if you think of the films that have come out recently about superheroes, or comic superheroes, inevitably there's always some kind of mutation that's responsible for some superpower. Okay. In a way, that is it. There is a message there that is telling you this is how evolution works. Through a mutation. But and I don't deny that you can call it a mutation. I'd prefer genetic change, because it's not always, it's just the way the word can be taken out of context, or maybe isn't in a context. So you end up putting it in your own context. And of course, if you see mutation as something wholly unnatural, usually it's associated with some kind of radiation or another thing that they portray as being wholly unnatural. Anyway, what was I getting at? All these superheroes that are in everything right now. All this comic strip stuff, all the films since the 50s. When they start bringing comics out, I don't know. Maybe earlier than that, late 40s. I don't know. Might even be earlier than that. But that idea pushes again that there are people that are superior to you, okay, and that are more fit to control, okay, whether it be in a positive or negative way, okay. but it reinforces that idea that you are not equal to everybody else. Okay, that's all it does. That's probably the purpose of it, you know. It's to just reinforce that idea that there's somebody above you, you know. I just thought it was interesting, you know. Where do we go on from here? Let's see what I got in my notes. Yeah, my biggest thing to take away from this is, before I get into that, another interesting thing that evolution pushes, this is one thing I'm talking about, is the onwards and upwards. You know, evolution supposedly is a progressive thing where everything gets better and more, I don't know, more complex, better, I don't know, more intricate, you know, struggling for words here. But the idea is that creates a, you know, everything going on in that line of upness is superior in some way. Okay. Which takes us away from natural law again. You know, it's the point of it is with this social Darwinism is to take us away from the idea of a creator. Is to take us away from the idea of actual nature or somebody actually creating us. And I say somebody, I mean something creating us. You know, the idea is, and I mean everybody's seen the bloody pictures of the monkeys, the apes, going on up, and then they bring in other ideas of let's see, I'm going to use, actually I'm not going to use that example because some people might not know it, but this is from C.S. Lewis, but I'm going to change it a little bit. But imagine you made 3 computer programs, right? And I had like Word, basic Word, and then I made a slightly more complicated one, which was Word, where you could like do more stuff, and it had like a spell check, and you can change the font color and even change fonts. And then you made yet another program that was an even better Word, and it was, I don't know, all the bells and whistles. You know, you could do all the basic Word, all the next level Word, and you could paint on it as well. Okay, so you got 3 different programs, and the theory is, you know, you have to go from basic to better to better to better to better. Well, that's the way social Darwinism wants you to think about evolution. This sort of idea of social evolution, you know, that everything gets better and better and better and better and better, and everything sprang from, you know, something that was less complicated, i.e., a oak tree comes from an acorn. You know, that idea. What they miss out in that progression, what they miss out is they miss out. They like to think that everything spawned from basically nothing. Okay. And although esoterically speaking, because I don't want to tell somebody the wrong thing here, even though my beliefs of the universe actually can encompass that idea, what it fails to point out is, like, if you think of the acorn and then an oak tree springing from it, what you have to remember is an acorn had to come from an oak tree to begin with, so it had to come from something more superior to begin with. You say that the natural progression of the computer programs, you know, my better Word and my next better Word and my next better Word, version, you know, 1, version 2.0, version 3.0, whatever, you know. has sprung from what? So you sprung from something very basic. The problem is that where did the idea come from for the first program? And it came from the mind of a superior thing, something far superior. It came from the human mind, you know. So the idea that something could have sprang from pretty much nothing is in line with creationism, you know, which is not the way scientists want to look at it. You know, if you look at all these things and you see where it really sprang from before, all these examples people like to use, you actually see, oh, maybe a superior mind was behind that idea in the first place. It's just a nice little nugget for people to think about, you know. You know, if you're a creationist, and I mean, believe C.S. Lewis was very much into it, being a creationist. You know, it might help you understand how evolution can be in that role of creation. If you're a scientist, of course, you'll just say I'm nuts, because there's no. I mean, not to be rude, but there are a lot of people that believe the science thing, and they are very firm in their beliefs. And the problem is they can't recognize that they are beliefs. That's the problem that I have with people in the scientific realm right now. Okay, nothing wrong with science. I think it's great, but we've got some fundamentalists out there, you know, and the same goes for what I call creationist people as well. There's fundamentalists in that lot as well. Again, all I can do is offer, you know, try and offer some perspective that I see as being a sort of middle ground, a sort of balancing point again. And it's probably a good place to end the video, actually, because we're at 32 minutes right now. 32. Important numbers. And I'll waffle on for a bit longer, because I'm just trying to think if I've forgotten anything. But that's really it. I don't really know what the recap is. The recap is, and I guess let's draw a conclusion from this. And this is my conclusion, what I think's happened, okay? I don't know, I can't talk about Darwin as a person. I don't really know what his intentions were with the whole thing, whether he's an honest guy, whether he's part of the, you know, that club. I don't know, you know. What I do know is that I know evolution in the true sense of the form has been known about for tens of thousands of years, I'm sure. And we've known about natural selection and man-made selection for thousands of years as well. Okay, so there's things that are facts there that we already know about. Okay, another fact we know: if you have a system that is changing, if you want to adapt to that system, you also have to be changing. So there has to be mechanisms within your genetic makeup that allows for changes. You have to have a collective group. You can't just have one if you have one person that's all the same, it doesn't work. Okay, so you have to have a collective group of individuals that are close enough yet have little differences that can allow you to keep up with nature. Okay, and change as you need to change. Okay, that's evolution in a nutshell right there. Okay, yes, the fittest of the species does survive, but they're not surviving by going around killing everybody else in the species. The way that the species survives is through cooperation with each other. okay? And I mean that in the broadest sense of the term, but I mean genetic cooperation, you know. You're lending your genetic information when you have a child and live in the environment that you're in. You're lending your genetic information to the species. So we're all equal, you know. You can't divide that up, okay? So the takeaway from here is, again, go out and learn natural law. The takeaway as well is, why would they manipulate evolution? You know, when you see the way that the world works, what usually happens is that if you want to control somebody, what you need to do is you need to have something that is that has truth in it. Okay, this is the secret. If you want to control somebody, you have to have a system that has some kind of truth in it, because that resonates with people. People have a gut feeling about this stuff. People have the ability to see this stuff. Okay, when you even if it's on a subconscious level. So if you want to control people, you give them a little bit of truth, okay, and then you put in the junk that you want them to believe with it. Okay, it's just as simple as that. Okay, so you get on the evolution bandwagon. It's already been known about. The scientists, the science thing is great for controlling people. I'll tell you why. Because if you look at the way science is structured, the government and big corporations basically control all of it. Okay, there's very few what I call backyard scientists. Well, I say there's very few. There's lots, and I would say most of the biggest breakthroughs that we've seen have probably come from backyard scientists. I mean, I don't think yeah, I mean, some of the people that I've been looking at, they don't appear to be what I would call system products of the system, if you know what I mean. Not like, you know, let's knock Einstein out of the way. And if you're, oh bloody hell, if you're into the particle theory stuff, I don't know if this is a good place to put this, but there's and I'm going to put another video up on this, okay, so we can get into the science thing a little bit more, because there's issues with that as well. Anyway, going back to evolution, we're on the roundup now. Yeah, if you want to control people, control truth, okay? Control it in a way that you give enough, but also you give enough of your own hype in with it. So this is why we have the manipulation of evolution. Evolution has been manipulated to make you think you need to buy more stuff, you know, that products only get better. I need more products. I need to raise my social standing because I need to look fitter than everybody else. The fittest rule, okay? So there's this class system which plays into the capitalist ideas. Great. There's also this idea of there should be certain rulers, you know, the fittest should rule, okay? Which is, it's all completely backwards. That's what, I can't say any more about it, you know. That's why evolution, unfortunately, has been manipulated to control you. You know, I pray that if you're a scientist, you take something away from this. When I say a scientist, I mean if you're into that, if that's your thing, you take something away from this, and rather than just preach the truth, you know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with evolution. It's just terminology. You know, I've watched several programs on evolution, and they don't say theory in any of it. You know, they just waffle on about evolution. And I mean, I haven't said theory in any of it, but I've explained what I'm talking about in this, and I think I've explained it truthfully, which is, you know, is my theory, I guess. Dan's theory of evolution. Maybe that would be a better title for the video. That's it. Thanks for watching. You can help other people if you think there's something useful in here, and you don't make videos yourself, or you don't do much in the way of talking about it to people because they think you're nuts if you talk to them. One thing you can do is click the like button, leave a comment, and share it with somebody else, or share it on some other media format. I'd be grateful. Well, I wouldn't be grateful. I don't give a flying two monkeys what you do, but I'm sure there's other people out there that would be grateful for hearing about this stuff. And of course, when you look at the quality of this video, it's not really winning any awards, is it? Let's be truthful here. It's just me with my ugly mug, not even talking straight into the camera lens like this. But anyway, thanks for watching, and that's it. Ciao for now. Bye.